Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon session, the first part. I guess more people will be coming from the marketplace, but I suggest we get started. So the first presentation will be done by two very famous actors from the IoT that will come on stage. So welcome with me, Mrs. Sara Brown and James Brehm from GBA. You can see their picture and you can see them on live.
Do you have a clicker? Sorry, guys.
You need it.
Okay.
What they're gonna talk about. Our key markets we're addressing this year, you might have noticed with all the previous presentations are about the utilities, the smart city and smart buildings. And through their activity at JBA, they have a lot of knowledge they would like to share with us, and especially about how to identify and nurture the leads, because we are all here for business. So I cannot wait to hear from them about this. So the floor is yours, Sara and James.
Thank you, Olivier.
Make us dream, okay?
Okay.
Make us richer. Thank you.
All right. You guys can come forward. It's always more fun if it's a conversation. Besides which, the lights are blinding. Please.
Yeah, and everybody, there are microphones here. We want this to be an open dialogue with our team as well. So if you have questions, don't hold them to the end. You can bring them at any time. So.
Okay. So James asked me to kind of get started and tell you how this session came to be. We received an RFP from the LoRa Alliance team looking to build some buyer personas in these key verticals that we've been talking about all week. And in all honesty, that's a very complex problem because there are so many different buyer personas. So we're going to talk to you about some ways to find those buyers and how to nurture that relationship into what we all want ultimately, which is a sale. First, I'll let James tell you a little bit about his business.
Yeah, so Sara's been with me a long time, both as a customer and as an employee. I call her my boomerang because this is her second stint with our organization as well. But I created a boutique market research and consulting firm focused on IoT or machine-to-machine communication over a decade ago at the request of a couple of customers. But before that, I had worked for a large market research firm. And we believe that this industry is so different than the connectivity pieces for voice or for hand communication or just tablets, that we wanted to get in here and take a look at what I call the hyper-connected world, or every device that should be connected is connected to the internet and to other devices to actually pull data from it and make sense. And we work, we do custom research projects. We have ongoing syndicated research. And we talk to around 300 to 400 different companies per quarter to vector and gather our data. I wish I didn't have to do numbers, right? Market research numbers, but most of the analysts have some real bad hockey sticks. I haven't actually ever seen a forecast go down other than in one of my studies. And we provide a lot of guidance around a place. So that's kind of who we are.
So just kind of digging into the idea of lead generation and lead nurturing, I think it's helpful, especially in technical communities that I've worked with over the many, many years, to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing and talk about definitions.
You know, people oftentimes just talk about, we're going to go to a show or conference, things like this, and generate leads, right? And that's on the forefront of not only the marketer, but the CEO of the company. You know, what's the ROI that I'm getting out of this? But if organizations aren't nurturing those leads and then bringing them in and then closing the sale and then continuing to nurture that relationship, right? Most of the money that you spend to come out to a show like this is wasted anyway, right? Or any conference, right? So, you know, what is lead nurturing, right?
Yeah, so lead generation, I think, let's go to the next slide. Whether you're doing it at a trade show or doing online lead capture, or any of many other ways to capture, the names and contact information of people you ultimately want to sell to. Unfortunately, a lot of times those names and numbers get lost in a sea of CRM data and a very, very, very busy sales team's schedule, rather than having the marketing team really nurture that lead and bring them along the buyer journey to the next step in an assist to the sales organization. And, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Sara and I have been working with a tier 1 mobile operator, so cellular operator, and their marketing group feels it's the sales team's job to nurture this. The sales team thinks that they should be getting more support from marketing. Customer service is wondering what their role in the whole process is. But, what we found out, and talking to both their wholesale and their retail groups, that a lot of the leads just get flushed anyway, and Marketing Sherpa says 80% of marketing generated leads get lost or discarded somewhere along the way. So.
Yeah, that's a lot of money we're all leaving on the table, sadly. That was a difficult conversation with that customer.
It was. Yeah.
So, just some benefits of lead nurturing, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of the nuts and bolts of how you do it. But really, the key benefit is what we're all here to do. As Olivier said, we're here to make connections that ultimately lead to new revenue for our businesses. Anything to add to that?
Well, a lot of people don't realize that if you're running through a full campaign to do the nurturing of the lead, does it only actually help close the deal, you're able to add additional, especially in IoT, additional service offerings to things. You increase the average order value, right? And it may not be an upsell or a cross-sell even. Maybe it's just you increase that value because of the dialogue that you've had along the way, right? That value proposition from the end customer is higher. It reduces customer acquisition costs immensely. But the biggest, I think, thing is, and it's the thing that a lot of people forget about, and I've been blessed to be with 2 companies that most of their business was done off a referral. I was one of the original guys at Rackspace, right? And I remember for the first 3 years of the company, we measured this stuff. 85% of our leads were referral business. Getting a referral or getting a customer to sign up with you, and you're with one organization, they move to the next. It's all relationship driven. And referral's the cheapest form of marketing out there that you can ever have as an organization.
And these are just some more statistics about the importance of nurturing leads. I don't like to beat a dead horse, but I do want to make sure everybody understands what happens after you gather the lead is absolutely critical to your success.
But, the one challenge, and you can probably move on to the next slide, is here, is making sure you have the correct targets as well. And if you notice, right, we're looking at cities, we're looking at buildings, and we're looking at utilities. And in the discussion that we had with the Alliance folks, it was, okay, what's the persona of the person that we're going after? What's that commonality of things that we're looking at? And to be quite honest, in this area, it's difficult. You have to define the market first. What is a utility, right? Is it electricity? Is it water? Is it gas? Those organizations are very, very different in their roles, their sizes, things like that. 148,000 water districts in the United States, about 3,500 utilities, right? Some real differences.
Bruce Chatterley's presentation before lunch, he broke down some of the complexity just under that category of utility.
Yeah.
It's really, and I'll put forward to the next one so you can see that it goes even.
Let's stay back there.
Okay.
City, right? You talk to a city. I got the CIO of the city of Los Angeles to admit on a smart cities panel that I was moderating that there is no such thing as a smart city. Can't be done. You can't take something that's been around for a bunch of years, throw some sensors on it, and now it's smart, right? He's got a whole bunch of smart silos in LA that are throwing off different disparate bits of data, and the best he can hope for, this is his words, the best I can hope for is that they're all using open data, and I'm able to abstract that at a higher level to make the decisions on it. And we heard from Calgary, there are segments, there are silos, LoRa's a piece of it, there are other pieces of what's going on from a smart city standpoint. So having a common persona is nearly impossible. And then when we get into buildings, that's even another story. Is it lighting? Is it HVAC? Is it occupancy? Is it usage? Am I a REIT? Am I a building owner that I'm using my own property? Am I right?
Residential, commercial, warehouse.
You got it. Yeah. So, it's complex. That's truly, because then we get into things like utility. Are we talking about generation, transmission, or distribution networks? And which states are we talking about? Because some states are regulated, some are not regulated. Some are really highly regulated, and you don't have another choice. And then parts of the state can be regulated and other parts unregulated. I just moved from San Antonio to Dallas in the last 12 months. In San Antonio, you're stuck. You got CPS, City Public Service. That's it. I go to Dallas, I have a choice of 100 providers.
Wow.
From a distribution standpoint. If we're talking about water, are we talking about water quality? Are we talking about water metering? Are we talking about wastewater? Are we talking about the groundwater stuff? Are we talking about the well sites themselves? It gets really complex.
Yeah, and I think any one of these sort of master categories, they all have their own sort of supply chain and logistical flows, and all those things are part of a water utility, but who's the persona that you're dealing with at any given point across that chain is going to be different.
Yeah, and let's even double click on that and say, from a water standpoint, you could be talking to the head of the LA Municipal Water District, which is, right, one of the largest metering agencies in the world out there with, a million customers there. Or are you talking about where I grew up, Ida Grove, Iowa, where the guy that's in charge of water is also mowing the baseball field on Thursday afternoon, right? I mean, the decisions are made at different levels by different types of people, and you can't lump them all into a persona. When you do that segmentation of water as well, the 148,000, 150,000 water districts, a third of the meters are managed in cities that, from a population standpoint or the meter district standpoint, it's in what I call the NFL cities, the top probably 30-ish cities by population. Then you go to the next segment, and that's probably population 150 to 200,000 down to 2,500, right? There's a third of the meters are in that segment. And then a third of the meters are by the 120,000 small guys out there that have between 25 meters and probably 1,000. So you can't. That's why getting to a persona and identifying it is, and the need for the nurturing piece is even more purposeful.
So James brought a bunch of fun statistics to teach you more about these different categories.
Yeah, why that equation is so, complex, right?
And I think that Brenna said she's going to be providing these slides to you guys. So when you want to chew on some meaty statistics, we'll have them for you.
I think in a session I did the other day, I brought that up. There's 100, I said this is the third time I'll say it in this session, 148,000-ish water districts in the United States. Anybody have any idea how many there are in the UK?
They can't read your eye chart because it's right there.
How many? How many?
32.
That's right.
So going forward, I'll just go through a few things that we think you guys as companies can do to improve your take rate with your leads. First of all, finding leads. We're at an association event. The LoRa Alliance is an outstanding organization, but it's not necessarily the first place, say, a building facility manager would go to learn about facilities management. So I would encourage you guys to look out to industry associations. And as you start to meet folks at, say, the facility managers tech show that's coming up next month, find who those guys are. What are their jobs titles? See, is there a professional association that they belong to?
Yeah.
Architects and engineers, for example, often have a lot of say in build-outs and new IoT deployments.
Yeah, in the building space as well, right? Are you looking to sell to REITs? Are you looking to sell to the property owners? You got BOMA, you got CABA. I was on the board of directors for a number of years for CABA, which is the Continental Automated Buildings Association. That's nothing more than a 12-step program for anybody that's actually trying to sell to a building association, but they've got a tremendous database and a tremendous following. It's a tremendous resource for white papers, webinars, marketing collateral, things like that in that space. But if you're wanting to talk and shake the hands of the actual building managers, it's the BOMA Association, Building Occupancy Managers Association.
Yeah. Just an example associated with this week, we joined the Florida Water Association. They have something like 1,100 water districts in Florida alone, and by joining them, I know the lead decision maker for every one of those districts, and I have their contact information. That's the difference between selling into an electric utility. I think Bruce was quoting, and I don't endorse his numbers. I'm just throwing it out there because I heard it earlier, and I don't have other numbers in front of me right now. But he was saying, 35 investor-owned utilities represent 85% of the power distribution in the U.S. That's 35 pretty big companies, whereas 1,100 relatively small localized water districts are where you want to go if you're going to sell water monitoring equipment. Another one is regulatory bodies. James, I know, has had some really good success finding folks through regulatory bodies and reaching out to folks like the Department of Energy, for example. I think you've got an awful lot of energy contacts through your Freedom of Information Act request.
I did something crazy once. I did a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Energy, and they pointed me in the right direction. And actually, they set me up with an API call. I can get access to any database the government actually has that's not classified now. It's a beautiful thing. Name, contact information, things like that, and as they're updated. And anybody that's had a violation from a wastewater standpoint gets placed in this database, and that stuff gets updated. Anybody that's managing a water district in all the utility stuff, because it's got some form of regulation. We've got access to that. If anybody wants to access that kind of information, we're here to be a support to
all of you.
You all as well. So.
Events we talked about already, they're really good for relationship building. You're not going to get as many leads out of an event, whatever event it is, as you might other ways. But one thing I don't know
when I started the company, the reason I jumped in and started speaking at so many events was actually to get those leads, right? I wanted to point this out. Speak at this show, right? Be seen, not just be heard, not just be the audience member, but participate actively with the alliance and participate in the show. Then you're seen as that expert as well, and people will come find you. You may not even realize they're there in the audience. The lead is there. So we do a lot of conferences for that particular reason. So
and there's you've all experienced but may not be familiar with something called account-based marketing. Anybody heard of that? Okay, so when you're on the internet, I don't know, you're reading the news, you're checking your Facebook page, whatever, and weirdly you get the same ad for Sierra Wireless no matter where you go. they're using something called account-based marketing, and they have identified you as somebody that they think might buy their stuff, right? And for a very low cost per click, they can put their content in front of that person with some careful segmentation based on, you know, your engagement with some of these other organizations. You could get in front of, you know, real buyers while they're in the process, their intent research process, trying to find out more about LoRaWAN, about what you guys are offering, about sensors, whatever. And the best way to generate leads using that kind of tool is to offer them an answer to their question. What were they searching for, right? Gee, I've heard about this LoRaWAN stuff. How does it work, you know? Offer them a premium piece of content, LoRaWAN 101, getting started with LoRaWAN. Capture their information. That's the beginning of the nurturing process.
Let's back up one.
Oh, back up.
Relevant content is also key, right? And I don't think we've talked enough about that, but providing relevant content, relevant marketing collateral, it needs to tell a story. It needs to have an ROI associated with it. It needs to be something that people want, not just marketing flash, right? Oftentimes, there's too much marketing flash. It has to have some substance behind it. So.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, analyst reports and white papers are really good for that.
So how do we get leads, right? We go to the different conferences, things like that. I think one of the screenshots in there is, I pulled it from WEF. WEFTech is Water and Wastewater Conference. ACE is also a water conference. Two different groups that they're focusing on, but within the industry. WEF also each state has their own basically group of water districts. They all have their own state association meetings. You heard the LoRa Alliance announce yesterday that they're doing accreditation of individuals as well, right? So certification of a person. Well, that's what WEF is really there to do, and their state associations also have continuing education. So they have monthly meetings. I talked to one water meter distributor in Oklahoma who expanded out of Oklahoma into Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, and he was getting leads at all these locations. I said, how'd you do it? He said, I brought in somebody that went out to the WEF regional conferences, and he said, all we're doing is we're sponsoring the lunch there, right? We come in, we get 5 minutes to speak every month. We sponsor the lunch. There's probably 100 people there. Costs us a few $100
Yep.
from Jason's Deli, right? And we're closing business based on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, another one is for buildings, IFMA, very similar setup. They do a lot of CLE, continuing education. My husband just finished his CLE credits for this year. So then once you've captured it, again, and we said this before, you need to nurture it. And nurturing is not the same as throwing an email out to that person's inbox every week, right? It needs to be a conversation that progresses over time, right? If you first captured them when they were looking up LoRaWAN on Google, right, and you captured them with a click on AdWords for your white paper, then the next conversation shouldn't be reiterating what you said before. It should be, okay, now I understand you're interested in LoRaWAN. How can I help you? Here's 3 other pieces of content, right? And move them and progress them through that research part of their journey to get them closer to a decision-making point. The other thing, I'm sorry, James. Go ahead.
The next one on the bullet point was personalized. I hate it when I get an email that says, dear bracket, name bracket, right? How many of us get those, right? So make sure you do personalize them. And I get a lot of stuff from people when they actually make it really personal, right, to me. then put a joke in it, right? Let the marketing department create it. Then as a salesperson or as the right, put something fun into it as well, right? Personalized doesn't mean personalized from the marketing department. I mean personalize this stuff too.
Right. And I think the other part of personalize is, making sure you have a personal contact, right?
Yeah.
If let's say I read this piece of information you just sent to my inbox. First of all, you got over the first hurdle. I opened it. Second hurdle, I read it. What's the third hurdle? What am I supposed to do now? Call you? Maybe I want to call you. Maybe I'm supposed to go to this other website and download another piece of content. So that's all about how you kind of, as a marketer, we stay away from terms like manipulate. You guide the buyer through the journey. Okay?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
So there's a microphone right back there. So.
At the beginning of the talk, you talked about this push-pull between sales and marketing as to who should be nurturing the leads, and I looked at the list that you had up, and a lot of it seemed to be marketing team tasks. Am I incorrect in understanding that, or is there a division that you see here?
So I've worked with a lot of different sales organizations in tech for longer than I care to remember, if I'm honest with you. And I think there's a push-pull, yeah. It can create a false gap, right? And if you're experiencing that in your business, you have a real problem. The marketing team exists to support revenue generation. And so when I look at, if I go back to this sort of nurturing, building out marketing materials that drive that person closer to the sale, that's absolutely my responsibility. Now, do I have to do the whole thing myself? Of course not, right? I create an email template for everybody that downloads something from my website and gives me their information. Maybe I have never met them before. I don't know how that lead came in. They just found me on Google somehow. I'm lucky, right? I got that web lead. Now what happens? We have a templated conversation. Hey, thanks for coming by, right? That's a template. I provide it out to my sales team, and every time it goes out, it says, and you should contact, I'm your person to talk about this, right? And so it's a team effort. You get from just pure marketing and maybe lead qualification on the marketing side to real sales enablement, which is, it's not the whole job, right? You have to have a sales team, but there's a lot more that marketing can do to help those guys be more successful at their job. I think that's marketing's responsibility. And then on conversion, now that's where you really want the sales guy. But marketing can still help.
I agree. This is where conversion happens is after all that heavy lifting has been done, after you've created that dialogue, after you've created that narrative that gets responded to. You have every right. If your marketing team has created the right narrative, as a sales guy, you have every right to ask for their business.
Yeah.
Right? And oftentimes people forget that. They think telling is selling. No. Telling the narrative or creating a narrative actually helps build it. So you're not telling is selling, you're asking.
Right.
Right? And then you're expressing your thanks, and you're asking for referrals, and you're making a promise to be a part of that. One thing I learned through this whole process as well is, and working for one of the greatest marketing departments at Gateway that I ever saw created, it's that asking for the sale, expressing your thanks, asking referrals. You've already earned that right, okay? But then you then ask them to do you a favor. Do me a favor. If I've helped you out, refer me. People feel obligated. Use that obligation hook as well as part of this.
Yeah, and I think just as far as negotiations and making yourself easy to do business with, I think it's sad sometimes you get all the way there and it becomes really hard to. We talked about it at breakfast this morning. Are you making this deal process difficult for me? Do I have to go through 1,000 red lines, or are we gonna just talk about each other's requirements and make something happen here? I've seen deals get all this way down the right. You're there. You've agreed on pricing. You've agreed on the plan, but you can't get through the legal paperwork. Maybe you make that one sale, but you're not getting a repeat customer out of that guy.
And that last bullet, the make ongoing support part of the promise.
Yeah.
It is a promise. And if you make that promise and you keep that promise, you keep that customer.
Yeah.
Not just when they're with that company, but when they're with the next company and the next company and the next company.
We're almost done. I think I have 5 more minutes. Does that sound right to you, Brenna? Okay, because my timer says red. Okay, and, the sort of what next, right? And that's the important thing too. I mean, the sale doesn't stop when your thing is delivered, right? To retain customers, marketing has a role, as does sales and project management, to make sure that customer is satisfied, that they're supported, that you're delivering against that promise of ongoing support. Anything to add to that?
I don't. I mean, I think this has been a good dialogue. I wish there was more interactivity from the crowd. I think everybody's got a lunch hangover.
Any questions? We've got a few minutes.
I'm going to point to somebody.
Uh-oh.
There's got to be a Dan Croft.
Yeah, so they can hear you.
Yeah. Because I saw you nodding along with a lot of the stuff too, Dan. So thank you for that.
Sure. So first a comment, then a question. The comment, the slide towards the end where it said, ask for the sale, I would actually edit that and put a after that, ask for the sale, and then shut up.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that way too often where they ask for the sale, let them say yes, hopefully, but let them say no, and then ask them what else needs to be done.
Yeah.
Hey, Dan, just to add to that, one of my best mentors actually told me once, no doesn't mean no most of the times. It means I don't know. Right.
And if they do say no and you don't know why and you just keep selling,
Yeah.
you may not be addressing the reason they've said no.
Right.
The question I have, going back to when you were talking about, drilling down on the utilities and what type and so on. In your opinion, in IoT, who is the decision maker? I don't care what type of vertical we're talking about. This sort of gets to the question about OT and IT. Who do you see as the guy, the lady, doesn't matter who it is, who actually is the one that's going to have to say yes?
I got my belief. It's the person with the pain. It's the person with the pain, right? It might be IT. IT might have the pain. OT might have the pain. One minute. So there was the Diageo group was losing about 20 cases of liquor in South Africa a week from rail cars, and a IoT company approached them and said, put a sensor on these rail cars when they open the door. We'll be notified that this is going on and be able to stop it right there. Oh, the security guy said, we don't have that in our budget, right? Recurring revenue thing. They kept losing. I don't know if you know what a case of Johnny Walker Blue costs, but man, it's a lot of money when you're losing 20 cases a week. He actually then took it to the chief brand officer. He walked all the halls, and he was on his way out the door, and the chief brand officer is riding down the escalator with him from the corporate headquarters and said, man, you look dejected, what's up? And he said, well, here's the problem. These guys are losing about 20 cases of liquor. I tried to sell them on this. They wanted to go with a cheap lock on it, and they don't think it can be solved with electronics. What they don't realize is, guys stealing 20 cases of liquor every week isn't doing it to have a party, right? They're going to also then bootleg this stuff, and somebody's going to get some bad liquor, go blind, and Diageo is going to get a lawsuit for $1 million, and they're in trouble. brand officer says, never thought about it that way. Come back to my office, sign the deal. So most times it's not the brand officer that's going to be responsible for IoT. In that case, it was. After they went through security, IT, OT, you name it, they went through everybody, was brand. So it's the guy with the pain that feels it the worst, that has the budget. Somebody asked me yesterday about water, who's the right person. You know, at one water district we were with, it was the billing clerk. She said she had the worst pain.
Yeah.
She needed the application. Metering guys, not so much. At another water district, we can't hire meter readers. So,
I mean, it really depends, but I think you're right. Who's feeling the most pain? Okay.
we're over time.
We're done. Thanks, Olivia.
So, thank you.
Thanks.
Let's applaud our speakers.